Very good morning, one and all. You're most welcome. The session is on travel and tourism, and rather grandly says, travelling again differently. And that is what we are going to address. Before we come to hear your views on this, when I was asked to moderate this panel, the first note that I sent to WEF and to the prospective thing is there's only two rules, basically. Two things you can't tell us. Two things you can't say. Number one, travel and tourism is the largest industry in the world, employing 10% of the global economy. That is a given. Anybody who works in tourism is well aware of that number. And the other thing you can't say is the recovery's been bigger and better than we ever expected. And the reason for that is that's also well known by now. I don't need you to tell me that it's the largest industry in the world and that the recovery is well underway. That said, we now can deal with the title. And the title is Travelling Again Differently. And that is what we are going to address. And we do it both in the short term, the sort of problems that we've had with the ramp up, the lessons that are being learned and how that's developed, and substantially what we need to do. Because if we just go back to the same old way, have we really learned anything? And I think of my trip coming here, I mean, frankly, did it exactly the same way as I always did. I went to your excellent airport. I got on one of Swiss's excellent planes. I got the train. How many of you got the train up here, by the way? How many of you took a car? No. You have not done Davos, and you have not had the rite of passage until you have done the Landquart dash from one platform to the other in 7 minutes. So I heard you. Right, our panel that we have with us. Next to me is Clare Akamanzi, the Chief Executive Officer of the Rwanda Development Board. If you call Rwanda the Switzerland of Africa, she will groan and smile secretly. She will also realise, and she has in many ways the jewel of the tourism crown at the moment in Africa. It will be the host of the WTTC. Next to me is the Minister of Finance from Thailand, who's very graciously allowed me to call him Minister Arkhom, so I don't have to attack the name, which would be guaranteed to be a faux pas. Minister, good to see you.
Thank you.
You're the one who's got the money, while tourism's trying to spend it.
Yeah. Last year we got the one-fourth of the pre-COVID number.
You're getting
10 million.
10 million?
10 million. We expect this year 20.
Wow.
And everything is open for all. Yeah,
right.
No restriction.
No, open for all, but they get to 20 million, but they got to 30 million at one point, and that was too many, and we'll talk about that. John Holland-Kaye is the CEO of Heathrow Airport. I don't think one says any more after that. Will you? I know. Will you have a third runway in my lifetime? I'm 60. I'm 60.
You're 60? You're
Yes.
still a young man. Of course we will.
Right. And Jeffrey Katz is Journera. I suppose you could call it Journera or Journera, since we're in Switzerland. But you know where we travel, how we travel, and what we travel. Tell us what you do.
So we operate smart infrastructure that allows a travel company, an airline, a hotel, etc., to know in real time what the traveler's entire journey is. So not just that they're on a flight, but what the entirety of the journey is, what's happening good, bad, and what could happen better.
And we'll talk about the better in a moment. Let's start with you, John. The recovery is underway. Things are going well, but you've had last year you had a very difficult year, including having to actually say we're going to cap numbers at Heathrow. That was quite dramatic.
It was quite a difficult decision, but actually the right decision, because what we are all about is protecting the journey for passengers who are travelling. Actually, I'd say that the whole of aviation had a really challenging year last year. And it's no surprise, it shouldn't be any surprise for actually all of tourism. We had 2 years with no revenue and a huge amount of infrastructure and people working in the sector, many of whom left during that time. And Heathrow, we went from about 75,000 people working at the airport across 400 different companies to just 50,000. So we lost 25,000 jobs in that time, and of course a huge amount of experience. But that is a pattern that you'll see at any airport and any airline around the world. And you still see it today in the Americas, in Asia, in the Middle East and in Europe, that we're still not yet back to full capacity. And
So
I think
why can't you get the staff back?
we are getting the staff back, but it just takes time to scale up again. And of course it takes time for people to learn the skilled roles. So what our job as the airport operator is to do is to make sure we keep supply and demand in balance. There was one point during last summer that demand was getting ahead of supply, so we had to put the cap in place to maintain that. But in spite of that...
Do you blame the airlines for selling seats on flights that were clearly going to bust the system?
No, I don't. This is a huge challenge for all of us. Everyone wants to get passengers want to be able to travel. Our job is to make sure that they can have a seamless journey when they do. And by putting the cap in place, we were able to deliver that. And the cap that we had in place, 100,000 departing passengers a day, was nearly 50% higher than Amsterdam, one of our biggest competitors. And now we have no cap. And that is a symbol of just how well we did. In fact, we grew more last year, I think, in passenger numbers than any other airport in the world. So that's a huge success. Didn't always feel like it because it was hugely challenging. But together, with the airlines and the handlers, we did an amazing job last year in making sure that people like you had a good experience travelling through Heathrow.
Oh, I've got your mobile number now for when I have a bad experience. Believe me. Minister, Thailand is in many ways, the poster child of tourism because it's grown so historically well. As you recover and reopen, what have you learned?
What we have learned is how to welcome the foreigners, particularly, as I said, for 2 years of the pandemic, we learned a lot from the COVID-19. So the only thing that's in order to open to all and prepare, I think we would encourage the people who are traveling to prepare themselves, ready to be travel, particularly for the health.
As the Minister of Finance, how important is tourism to your economy?
Oh, it's actually 12% of GDP. Some people say that we are over reliant on the tourism industry, but I think the tourism industry has a very big impact to the grassroots economy. So our policy is how to localize the international tourism to the local people.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Because looking at this is the scarf made from the handmade, only one piece in the world.
Oh.
Yes. And I can give you. This is the
That's
natural.
very kind of you, but I think you might need it with the cold weather.
That's okay. I have another one.
This is a difficult moment. This is a difficult moment because am I getting a scarf so my questions get easier? But it is a very fine scarf. Now, of course, when I read that the minister has got a bad cold, guilt. Well, yes, thank you, Minister.
It's a natural dyeing. And this money goes to the people in the village.
Right.
So this is our policy. And the other thing is how we introduce our soft power in the country. Apart from visiting the Phuket, which is a little bit the modern city, and Phuket, Chiang Mai, but we have another, what we call the second-tier cities.
Right. We'll come on to that in just a second because that's part of the future thing. Claire, what have you got for me?
Well, thank you, Richard. One of the participants in Davos this week is the group CEO of Etisalat, a telecom company in the Emirates. 2 days ago, I was reading a review that he did on Rwanda. He spent 1 week in Rwanda during Christmas. And he said, just like you, that he had heard Rwanda as the Switzerland of Africa, but he thought it was an exaggeration, like many, I believe, would be. But he said he was pleasantly surprised. And then he went on to give his review of tourism in Rwanda. And that made me really happy because he is the kind of tourist that we're looking for in Rwanda. Unlike Thailand, we cannot take 20 million people. We're a small country, eco-friendly, we are low volume, high yield tourism strategy. And for us, when you look at the COVID-19 impact on our tourism, that is a strategy that works for us. Today, if you look at our visitors to the national parks, we're actually 21% higher than we were during the pandemic. And I believe that's because we focused on low volume because of our eco-tourism and high yield. And the group CEO of Etisalat, I think, is the kind of tourist that works for Rwanda and that helps us to recover.
Oh, you're walking into my trap here.
I'm happy to walk into it.
We'll come to it in a second. I just want to hear from you, Jeffrey, because what have you seen from the data that tells us how we're doing things differently now than before?
Well, I think, as you alluded to, the data suggests that there aren't a lot of differences. And there are still a lot of shortcomings in the way the travel world works. In other words, one of the themes of Davos is collaboration in a fragmented world, and there's nothing more fragmented than the travel industry. As you could identify, no matter how you got here, you probably went on more modes of transport, you probably had a high likelihood of an interline airline trip, which is very unusual in the modern world. And you had a lot of things that didn't come together. Your calendar's screwed up, your confirmation numbers cause you a lack of a certain bit of competence. So that difference isn't happening yet, and I think travel will continue to boom, travel will continue to be more international, not less international, and that complexity needs to be better, needs to evolve better to make the traveling experience better, and I would argue
can we do that?
Possible.
Everybody says about digitization and all this.
Yeah.
Is it really, when sometimes you can't even get airlines in the same alliance to have the same PNR?
Correct. Well, I think first of all, it's very doable. On the promenade, there's many exciting companies for whom this puzzle is a walk in the park, They'd rather work on climate change than making travelers simpler because it's a harder problem. But I would say the question you might ask is, when will we see the leaders of the travel industry seek to prioritize collaboration more? Because that's really what's required to cross some of these divides.
Just to build on that, I think one of the things that has been very positive during COVID is that we have worked far more closely together as a system than we ever have before. I think actually the relationships that we have as an airport operator with our airlines, which historically has always been quite challenging because economically we have conflicting interests. We've been far more collaborative, working together to get people travelling again, find simpler ways of doing it. And I think that's something we need to pivot from to make the whole system much simpler, sharing data much more, focusing on the passenger and how we make their journey smoother. And ironically, there are some things that governments are doing that are, for once, ahead of where the industry is. If I look at the immigration's arrivals process, you travel through Heathrow, for more than half of all of our passengers, they can now use e-gates when they arrive into the country. No more queues for seeing an individual. I arrive in Switzerland, I have to queue to see a border officer. Completely unnecessary. And in fact, a machine is far better at reading your passport than an individual is. And that's a model which we should see in all countries around the world. Let machines do the mundane work while the officers, very expensive, highly trained, can focus on the problem passengers.
Even within countries, within the country, you can have difference. Munich might have machines available for the UK, Frankfurt hasn't got them yet, or whatever it might be. But if you get that bit, if we can't even get that bit right, it doesn't bode well for what else we can get right, is it, in a sense? The collaboration that they're talking about, it sounds great, doesn't really happen very often.
Well, I think for Rwanda, for the tourism to grow the way it has, collaboration within the government and with the private sector has been extremely important. Today we give visas on arrival, and the reason government decided to give visas on arrival for everyone, every citizen of the world, which was a very bold step. Anybody from Jamaica, from Thailand, or wherever in the world, you don't have to get a visa, you get it on arrival in Rwanda. And the reason for that was because tourism was important. So the immigration had to work together with the tourism in order to make that possible. And this is also together with the infrastructure that we've built. Today, Rwanda has all the key infrastructure. Rwanda flies to maybe 22 destinations, including Heathrow. And we recently partnered with Katz. We have a joint venture with Katz. We're going to be partnering to build the infrastructure that is required. So I believe that collaboration is not always easy. Let's not make a mistake about that. But it's extremely essential, as we've seen in Rwanda, that you
Where does it break down?
Where did it break down?
Where does it break down, collaboration?
I think just collaborating among people, bringing people to the same thinking and making sure that people think the same way and deliver the same way is always a challenge. But for us, what we've done is that the government takes the leadership. So when the government takes the leadership and convenes the key partners together and delivers the vision, then collaboration happens much faster.
It's a relatively small country with a relatively straightforward ability to do that. Would you agree? Let's take Thailand, where the importance of tourism is recognized by its economic weight, basically. But the tourism minister, how much weight does the tourism minister have when they come to you and say, can I have some more money, please?
Actually, we have the tourism funds actually given by the government, actually by the Ministry of Finance, because we...
You?
Yes, sure. But the return of the money we put to the tourism authority, I think has been worthwhile, you know, because receiving the up to 40 million, which is huge money for the country. But the nice thing is you know, in Thailand, it's like it's a long history too, because we are working with the private sector. Whatever the voice that we listen, okay.
To be fair, Thailand with the Phuket sandbox, which you pioneered, admittedly it was difficult to do.
That's an experiment.
Experiment.
Yes.
But at least you did it. At least
Yes,
somebody was
yes.
willing to do it, to do that.
With the cooperation with the community in Phuket.
So let's talk about then, if you've got this idea of collaboration that's so important, let's talk about the type of tourist. Because you've just said...
I walked into your trap.
You did. You see, Thailand is, again, the example. Thailand, having reached 25, 27 million, a former Thai tourism minister, she decided to shift the strategy. No longer quantity, instead quality. That's not to be dismissive of backpackers. We were all backpackers at one stage. However, Thailand doesn't want as many backpackers now, do you?
No, that's different. That's not my idea. Because the backpack, you know, has a very big impact to the grassroots, as I said in the beginning.
Right.
People in the village, people in the street selling food, selling things on the street, okay? That's the big impact. And I remember there was one tourist visiting Thailand, and it was raining very hard. And one of the ladies who was selling goods, and she made the plastic coat for him. That's the Thai culture, you know. So big impact to the grassroots. That's our policy. Secondly, try to get the people, the tourists, spend more in the country. So don't just stay in the hotel, but go other places. So stay longer. Yesterday, I met some of the participants here. She spent 1 week in Thailand and also the 1 month too, to work from home, because they don't go to the office in Hong Kong, but they stay in Thailand and they can work anywhere.
But every country is trying this strategy of we want to improve, quote, the quality of our tourists.
If I can come in there, Richard, I think it starts with the product that you're offering. For Rwanda, we have national parks where the gorillas live, and it's our most premium product, is only 160 square kilometers. It's a small national park. And so protecting the national parks for long-term tourism is extremely important. Now, we do have backpackers that still come to Rwanda, but we don't spend our strategy and our marketing and our promotion targeting that group. We spend most of our resources targeting the group that we think are high yield. And when they do come, two things we achieve. One, is the environment that is protected. To see mountain gorillas for 1 hour costs $1,500. And I'm telling you, it's 21% higher than what we had pre-pandemic. It's doing really well. We even introduced a new product called exclusive trekking. If you want to see gorillas alone with nobody else, just your girlfriend or your husband, you pay $15,000 to see it for 1 hour. And guess what? We have sold a lot more exclusive packages, almost 10 times than we did pre-pandemic. Now, the reason for that is we think about these tourists, what do they want? They want safety, they want cleanliness, they want organization, they want infrastructure, and we do our best to give them that quality so that they can pay for it. Just one more thing. When we make more money from tourists, you know who benefits also? The communities. Because 10% of all the money we make goes to the communities. And when they make more money, they're better custodians of the environment.
Which creates a different challenge for you. And I realise, you know, I'm going down the road of what your problems are. But what do you do besides gorillas? Yes. I mean, to a certain extent, yes. How many people in here, by the way, have been to Rwanda and seen the gorillas? Right, so you've got a lot of potential people here who are all going to spend $1,500 to come and see the gorillas. But as more people see them, how do you get people to come back?
And to stay longer to see other things as well. Now, we've built new products. We worked with a number of conservation companies in the world, and we reintroduced and rehabilitated the other national parks. You can actually see the big five, rhinos, lions, in Rwanda as well. Most people know Tanzania, they know Kenya, but you can actually see all the big five in Rwanda as well, as an addition to the gorillas.
This idea, Jeffrey, of people, you know, the right sort of tourist. And I accept the minister, what he says. Thailand with mass tourism does require one level, and you want to move people up the scale. Egypt is another great example in the 15 million category, moving people up the scale. If everybody's doing it, can everybody do it?
Well, there are different business models, and there's certainly the high yield. We're in Davos, so there's an elite sort of travel that's very lucrative. And in a mode where resources are scarce, it's a fairly typical strategy to make sure you put your resources against the highest yield or the best return opportunity. But there are many, many, many business models out there today that go after the broadest possible tourism. In the US, we use the label the ultra low-cost carrier. Extremely successful, extremely profitable, modeled to some degree after Ryanair, for example. And it's true in backpacking, it's true in bicycling. These businesses are booming. Campgrounds, they're booming. And so there are business models that go after, I would say, all kinds of travelers. But if you have scarce resource, it's very tempting to go after the highest returning customer. And you see that everywhere. And my favorite pet peeve right now is the credit card airline relationship. Has everybody tried to get into an airline lounge lately? And seen
now we've moved into real Davos elite territory.
and
We're complaining about the airline lounges.
And you see how busy they are, or how you have to queue up. And the main driver there is the airline companies make so much money from their credit card relationships that they mass distribute, in effect, the credit card in exchange for big fees from banks. And as a consequence, everybody has to queue up to get in a lounge, because now when I have a new airline credit card, I get lounge access. This has become a really big issue in most of the hot airports, at least in the United States. That's because the airlines make so much money from their credit card relationships. So again,
yeah, but then you get the backlash on that.
Yes,
because,
you get
for example, Delta, which has just greatly tightened up access to its lounges.
Correct.
United, which has its Polaris lounge, which unless you've got a Polaris ticket and you're traveling with your grandmother and it's a Thursday in October, you won't get in.
Yeah, no, so the economics have gotten a little tougher for the user of the credit card. Those lounges will be jammed for quite a while, and as we know, it's very difficult to invent new lounge space. That's a multi-year process, and there's not infinite amount of space probably at Heathrow to make available. But this is just another example where the money is really obvious, and companies go grab it.
Is it difficult for you? I mean, airlines all want more space. They want bigger lounges. You have a finite amount of space.
Well, that is typically the case, and space allocation within an airport is one of the big challenges. But I think a lot of this comes back to the whole aviation system getting back into sync, getting back to full capacity. And one of the things that I think we need to focus on is building resilience in. We need to automate a lot more of the journey. We would all benefit from that if you didn't have to go between different apps, and if you had a seamless journey, we'd all benefit from that. But we also need to build resilience in. And that is part of the opportunity, I think, because of the greater collaboration we have, the greater focus on the end consumer. I think we've got an opportunity to do that.
What do you mean by build resilience in? If it's going to go wrong, it'll go wrong spectacularly.
Well, that's exactly the challenge. Does it have to go wrong spectacularly? Because many of the examples you think of are based on building a system that isn't resilient. And the example of that would be the great focus for many airlines and airports over the last few years has been about driving down the cost. And when you drive down cost, you very often take out resilience. You have machines doing things that people used to do. When the machine fails, there's no person there to provide the backup. And that's something that we need to work on as a system. 80% of the people who travel through an airport on an airline don't need to see anyone. They know exactly what they're doing. They can travel smoothly because of automation. When the automation fails, we've got to have a backup system. And that's where the fragmentation we have in aviation fails us, because no individual company has enough people. Collectively, we could do though. And that's where we as an airport operator need to step in to make sure that we have enough people who can support the airlines when check-in doesn't work, support them when the baggage handling doesn't work, so that you as a passenger can have a seamless journey regardless of how well the systems might be working.
Jeffrey, do you think the Gulf operation is better designed for exactly what John is saying, because it's a single operator? They operate the airline, the same person, Sheikh usually is head of the airline, the airport, the tourism authority, probably the investment board as well, and those sort of decisions can more easily be made. You're agreeing with me, John?
I am. I think we've got an over-complex ecosystem, and I think we need to look at how we can simplify it, focused on the consumer. It's the consumer who brings us all together.
Well, I think that's right.
And if we can get it right for the consumer, don't focus on our own profit and loss account, focus on what's right for the consumer, then a lot of the things that have been difficult will fall into place.
Yeah, I mean, the Gulf, just to speak to the Gulf, which is an interesting part of the world, you have infinite financial resources, and it's a bit newer too, so they could start with more of a clean slate than, let's say, Heathrow could, and they have much more of everything, real estate, for example. So they could plan a little bit more holistically. Now, even they're reaching some limits in terms of how nirvana-like it can be. But I will say, entities like an airport, like an important airport like Heathrow, can stipulate standards that ultimately, or in Bangkok, can stipulate standards that become part of a fabric that makes the world start to collaborate a little better, because everybody's going to be in Heathrow, they want to be in Heathrow, and if there's a certain set of standards, let's say for seamless journey or for resilience, that can begin to set the stepping stones that industry has to begin to build towards, and good ideas will spread. You know, they may not like it in the beginning. This is not my priority for today, but having done it, good ideas tend to spread.
I want to talk about over-tourism. As we came into the pandemic, everybody was very worried about over-tourism, and we think of the great examples of it. We've all got our own favourites: Barcelona, Venice,
Disney World,
Prague, Disney. Anywhere else?
Florence, yeah.
Florence, yeah. Anywhere else?
So many.
Lots of them.
Kyoto,
What?
Japan, or
Well, careful.
Kyoto.
Right, excellent. The point is, you, sir, Thailand was a very good example of potential over-tourism that needed to be controlled, or it needed to be adapted. How far have you come out of the pandemic with a new theory, a new way of doing it?
I think first the capacity of the airport. We need to be well prepared, as you mentioned that about the capacity, because many people left the job during the pandemic. So I think machine automation should be replaced the human being. Okay. Secondly, the need to prepare for our future. Not only the local economy, but also the what we call the F5, not the jet fighter anyway. It's 5F is the kind of the food. For example, you probably know the tom yam gung.
Oh, yes.
Tom yam gung. But the second one I would recommend is the masman, the chicken curry. That's won the prize, the first prize in the world.
Oh.
So that's second menu. But food, fashion from the Thai silk, okay, and festival, and the fighting is Thai boxing, okay, and the film, 5F. So
Right, but they can all generate huge amounts of numbers of people. How do you restrict the numbers of people in a fair way?
it's quite difficult because many people want to go to Thailand.
That's why I'm asking. All right. Well,
I think it's quite difficult, but we accept all the people,
Right.
because they are go different places.
that was one of the strategies, isn't it?
Yes.
To get people out into other parts.
77 menus. Have you tried that?
Sorry?
77 menus.
No. I haven't.
Menus.
Yeah, because not only Bangkok, Phuket, Chiang Mai, but spread around the country, another 76 provinces. So that's a place that you can put the tourists, our friends, to the other cities, making the equality between the cities.
This is a very strong strategy which many places are trying, as you are just really getting your tourism industry up and throttling. Mm-hmm. How aware are you of the need that, besides just you can't have too many people going to disturb the gorillas, mm-hmm. but at the same time you just don't want millions of people arriving, or do you?
Well, our strategy has been low volume, and I think for the gorillas, yes, price has been the distinguishing factor, making it expensive. But our challenge today is how do we get the tourist that comes to Rwanda to do more things, different things, and spend longer? So you don't need 10 people to do 10 things. How do you get one person to do as many things as possible, close to 10? And for us, it's been diversifying what they can do in the country. One of them is really making sure that people can learn the history, that tourists who come to learn the history in addition to seeing the national parks. A country like Rwanda went through the genocide against the Tutsis in 1994, learning how you can actually rebuild a nation from a fragile state to a thriving state. That's part of what we put in our experience. The other one is food and hospitality. More restaurants, more cuisines, more experiences, more tours within the city. So you have urban tourism, not just going to the national gorillas. And maybe the last one has been the sports tourism that has been a good niche for us. Sports, I remember when we advertised with Arsenal, and they're doing very well today, they're top of the table, which is really good news. Mm-hmm. But when we did that, everybody was like, how can Rwanda, a country, developing country, advertise Visit Rwanda on Arsenal? But I'm telling you that today, on the African continent, we have positioned ourselves increasingly as a sports tourism destination, starting with the bold decision that just shocked everybody, Visit Rwanda on Arsenal, Visit Rwanda on PSG. Now, NBA does its Basketball African League in Rwanda. We're hosting FIFA Congress in March this year. We have the International Union for Cycling happening in Rwanda in 2025. And I think that bold, diversification that shocks the world, but at the same time, the world takes notice, and then you begin to yield from it.
That is exactly... the two of you have given the orthodoxy of spreading the tourism around the country. It's very difficult. You're starting from a lower base and from a newer base. Mm-hmm. You have a more sophisticated base and a more traditional base. It's harder for you, I would suggest, than it is for you, because you've got to get people want to go to Chiang Mai, to Phuket, to there, and you now have the job of getting them to go elsewhere.
And we need a good infrastructure, mm-hmm. Airports, regional airports, and the rail system. Okay.
Well, that's back to you.
Yeah.
That's back to you to finance it.
Yes. We invested already. When I was in the when I was the Minister of Transport, roads and rails are being under construction.
Oh, so you're responsible for the roads and the rails as well?
For the past 8 years, I spent the money, but now I have to collect the money. Tax and taxation is one of my job. To finance all infrastructure, to make the people more convenient and comfortable in traveling. And the nice thing is our customer, not only ordinary people, the elderly and the handicapped. So all facilities are preparing for the old age people who are traveling a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're the ones who'll have the money.
Yeah, they spend more.
Let's turn to this successful, because your data, the ability, I mean, okay, so one of the first World of Wonders that I went to film as the reopening took place was Venice. I was absolutely amazed, extraordinary how quickly Venice had got back to the bad old days. Next month, I was in Dubrovnik. The cruise ships were arriving. So whilst they have the best intentions, Jeffrey, the impossibility or difficulty maybe of executing a strategy, of diversifying out of the main areas.
Well, I mean, all of these are big challenges. Ultimately, we know that travelers can react very quickly. If they have a great experience, they'll come back again. Mm-hmm. If they have perhaps a less great experience, they're going to adjust, and they might go to a different market, or they might go to a different place in Thailand. And so I think these things, they tend to be self-correcting. But post-pandemic, what we saw is people wanted to travel again, and they wanted to go to places they loved again. And a certain class of traveler, of course, wanted to explore new. Might be Rwanda, or might be something else that's new. But generally speaking, what happened is the places that were loved got traveled to very intensely. And now we're seeing sort of another phase of adjustment. I mean, I don't think there's a strategy that manages where travelers want to go. They decide. It's a giant population, and while airlines are pretty good at predicting it, consumers are going to go where they're going to go, and they're very creative, as you know.
I want to finish before we do. The big growth area, which again we're talking about in terms of travel differently, turn to yourselves here in the room. So, everybody wants experiences. Today, travel is experiential. It's about the bucket list. It's about doing the thing you've always wanted to do. Who in this room has done that? Has anybody, what did you do?
Landed on Catalina Island.
Sorry?
Landed on Catalina Island
Catalina, you landed on Catalina. When did you do that?
2 weeks ago.
Oh, recently. You've always wanted to do that? So.
We were part of that Venice mess. Working our way south of it.
You went to Venice?
Yeah, spent 2 weeks working our way south across Italy.
Yes, sir.
Leaping Tiger Gorge.
What?
Hiking.
Hiking, oh, I thought you said leaping.
Leaping, yeah, Leaping Tiger Gorge.
Really?
That's what it's called. It's a crazy hike.
And you'd always wanted to do that?
Yeah.
I went to World Cup in Qatar and dune bashing in the desert, somewhere out in the middle of nowhere.
You'd always wanted to do well? Yeah.
Always.
Was it worth it?
You know, it was worth it. It was really far from home. I live in San Francisco, so I was on the plane forever, but it was worth it. It was worth it.
Was it expensive? Yes, we'll take that as a yes.
It cost.
It cost. That's a nice way of saying it. Yes, go on, John.
Well, I'd just like to bring up another topic which I think we need to face into, which is many of the places which are benefiting from tourism also suffer the effects of climate change, which we all need to face into. And I think we just established that the people in this room can afford to travel, they can afford to be here. We collectively need to play our part in tackling this. And this isn't just at the government level, it's not at the company level, it's at the personal level as well. And we all know that in aviation, which isn't a big contributor to climate change, but it is a significant one. We need to switch to sustainable aviation fuels. And it's countries like Rwanda and Thailand with a big agricultural and forestry sector that can be the producers of sustainable aviation fuels in the future. And so if you're a financier or an energy company, you need to be investing in these countries to help to develop that sector, give them some energy independence. But as individuals and as companies, we need to be paying the premium for sustainable aviation fuel so we can get the cost of it down so that the mass market and developing countries don't have to pay for the energy transition. The wealthy people in this room and the wealthy nations should be funding the energy transition in aviation to help support developing countries.
How realistic is that? I mean, in the sense that highly price sensitive on airline tickets, a system that is completely geared to the lowest common denominator or the cheapest ticket eventually.
Well, it's entirely doable, actually, and many companies have already started to make the move. Microsoft charges an internal carbon price for aviation, $100, which happens to be around the premium cost per tonne of sustainable aviation fuel. So actually those kinds of internal company policies can help to make the shift. And this is huge. The companies alone probably make up about 30% of the fuel use in aviation. So them switching to sustainable aviation fuels creates the market in itself.
But what about, let me just express the unspeakable, that which should not be named. Don't travel. Just don't take the trip.
Well, I think that is a Northern European indulgence. We can all choose not to travel in this part of the world, but that's not going to affect travel in India or China or in Asia or Africa, where travel is massively underdeveloped, where there's a real equity issue with people being able to travel. We need a solution that changes the energy use, not changes the ability to travel, because travel, as we all know, is a wonderful thing. We're here in person because we were able to travel, and we all get some benefit out of being here. So the answer is not to stop travelling, it's to change the energy we use on the planes that get us there. Or,
let me refine that. It's a combination of both. We are still going to have to reduce the amount we travel.
I think that is a personal choice. But one of the arguments you have against sustainable aviation fuel is that it'll put up the cost of travel. Well, it may well do, and certainly for those in the short term, it will do because it is more expensive. But that is a choice for companies and individuals. You either pay the premium or you choose not to fly. But many companies will choose to pay the premium, and they should do.
Minister.
Well, in that case, you have to turn back to Thailand.
Oh.
If you don't travel, just go to Thailand. because next year, by the last quarter of next year, quarter 4, one of the refinery will be making the SAF. But second point is you need my help because the tax, in order to make it cheaper, SAF.
So you're either not going to tax it, or you're going to reduce the tax, or you're going to get it for subsidy.
Subsidy.
Oh my goodness, he said the word subsidy. You're going to subsidise SAF.
Yeah, actually during the pandemic, we subsidized the domestic airline in order to get the people traveling, okay, and making the cost down during the 2 years of pandemic, 3 years actually.
We're coming to the end. He's subsidising, by the way. Okay, you're all experts on travel. I assume I've got a ticket for you. You can go anywhere you want. Where's it going to go? Where are you going to go? Anywhere you want.
Me, I live in a beautiful place. I'm going to stay home.
Where's that?
That's in Colorado.
Oh, well, I'm coming to visit. John?
If the ticket includes the tourism as well, then I'd love to take my family to see the mountain gorillas.
Great.
I know somebody who might be able to get you up a mountain. Where would you go?
I would stay home and welcome all foreigners.
I guess I asked for that one. Go on.
Well, Nyungwe National Park in Rwanda is a place that not many have visited, but it has a very beautiful nature forest, one of the oldest nature forests in Rwanda, in Africa actually. I would want to go back there and spend more time than I've ever done there.
You've been before?
I've been before.
And has it got any animals?
It has chimpanzees and other primates, colobus monkeys, But it's a gem that is yet to be discovered by many. I would go there and even promote it.
You have all your holiday destinations in front of you. I'm told. Oh,
And what would yours be?
Oh, yes.
okay. You'll have to wait. Actually, I do have an answer when people ask me that. When people say, where's your favourite place in the world? And I always say the same place.
Heathrow Airport.
Well, Heathrow Airport. Absolutely. Terminal 2. The Queen's Terminal. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.